All right, back for another round. This time, differentiation in the language arts classroom. So here we go. So as you start to work with differentiation, this was a quote from one of my students a couple years ago. And this is what he wrote about differentiation when he was trying to create different ways of differentiating in the actual lesson plan. He said it currently feels like a make-work project for the excelling and a charity case for the developing group. So usually differentiation, when we think differentiation, we're just going to those kids who excel or who are finished early or actually really catch the concepts quickly. We often just give them more, right? We just get them to do more stuff. And the children who need more time or are maybe not as quick at understanding the concepts, then we lessen it and we don't say, oh, well, you only have to do 2 sentences instead of 5. So what I want to do is I want to dispel that that's what differentiation is in our lesson planning. So this resource is actually on your reading list. So you can stop now and have a look, or you can listen to the whole lecture and then go back and have a look. I want you to peruse and be aware of what is in the document. So if you look specifically at the table of contents on the 3rd page of the introduction. And then the ELA chapter is chapter 11. It's pages 195 to 213. It will give you some really specific ideas of what you can do for differentiation in ELA, but it covers all of the subjects. So it's a good little resource to, again, put on your ePortfolio so that you can access it when you're out on practicum, because this will be your reality that you will be asked to differentiate. And this is a good resource to go to. But let's look at some of the key elements of differentiate instruction so that you don't end up in Brandon's situation. So basically, the very nature of differentiated instruction means that it will look different in different learning contexts and environments depending on the student's, teacher, and/or curriculum. In all contexts, however, effective differentiated instruction involves knowing your students, knowing where they're at, understanding the curriculum, sharing responsibility with the students. So this is not all on you, right? The students also need to take some responsibility for knowing where they are in their learning and for progressing to the next level. You want to take a flexible and reflective approach. So you want to try some things and then reflect on it. And you want to provide multiple pathways to learning. And that's what we're going to look at today, is how do you actually set up those multiple pathways to learning. So these are sort of the key paths to learning that you need to differentiate. So differentiate the following for the spectrum of students in your class. So there are 4 things, let's try to do this way, 4 things that you should be thinking about when you are differentiating. It's not just, I'll give this child more worksheets, or I'll give this child fewer examples or sentences. It's absolutely not just that. Okay, so content. So examples of differentiating content at the elementary level include using reading materials that are a variety of reading abilities, putting text materials maybe on like recording, like I'm doing here. So you would actually record some of your materials. Use spelling or vocabulary lists at readiness levels for students. So maybe pulling those vocab words, those spelling words from contexts that are actually at the child's reading ability level. Presenting ideas through auditory and visual. So you're talking and you have something visuals for the students to see. You use reading buddies so that they actually can hear the content several times, and you meet in small groups to reteach that content. It's like the dosages that I've been talking about, so that those students who need to hear those concepts 17 times, you actually then can do that in small groups. So that's how you actually differentiate the content. So say you're going to be teaching phonemic awareness. You let them listen to it. Pull them in small groups. teach exactly what they need at the level that they're at. So that's the actual content. So those are ways to actually differentiate content. Let's talk about processes. So examples of differentiating process or activities at the elementary level include using tiered activities through which all learners work with the same important understanding and skills, but proceed with different levels of support, challenge, or complexity. Okay, so you can provide interest centers that encourage students to support subsets of the class topic of particular interest to them. So maybe they're all working on a particular concept, but some will be working at a higher level and some will be working a little bit at a lower level, higher level blooms versus lower level blooms. You can offer to actually differentiate process is you can offer manipulatives or other hands-on supports for students who need them. So for students who really need to kinesthetically engage with the process is you give them, I know you've been doing lots of math manipulatives. So if you're trying to teach them addition process, you give them 6 blocks and 6 blocks and you let them actually manipulate them. Okay, so that's what we mean by there. So products, examples of differentiating products at the elementary level include giving the students options of how to express the required learning. So say you want them to be writing at a grade 4 level. Well, does it matter if they're writing a blog? Does it matter if they're writing a letter? Right? Does it matter if they're writing an academic paper? So it depends on and maybe there's lots of flexibility for the actual product. Could they show understanding of the concept through a puppet show? Could they develop a mural with labels so that they're actually using pictures to actually, so does the end product all have to be the same? Okay. You also can use rubrics that match and extend students' varied skills. So if you know you have a student that if they write 5 words, that's like, woohoo, yep. Then you have a slightly different rubric. Now, I know that you get into, well, then how do you actually put that in your grade book and how do you compare students? Don't worry about that so much right now because we're trying to just differentiate that product for them so that they can actually showcase their learning. Okay, and learning environment. So examples of differentiated learning environment at the elementary level include making sure there are places in the room to work quietly and without distraction, especially for those students who get overwhelmed by sound and by light. You maybe want to provide materials that reflect a variety of cultures and home settings, right? So if they never see anything that's familiar, you may want to bring in a pillow or, allow a child to sit on a pillow instead of sitting at the desk. And then you're like, but then I'll get into issues. That's how you have to set up your classroom so that children are accepting of maybe that another child wants to sit on a pillow. Okay. Set out clear guidelines for independent work that actually matches the individual needs. So if you have a child who can actually work for 30 minutes on their own, and then you have a child that needs, a little bit of guidance every 5 minutes, then set up your learning environment in that way. Develop routines that allow students to get help when teachers are busy with other students and cannot help them immediately. So set up a buddy system so that if you're busy with doing a small group, that student who actually needs help can actually have a buddy, and that buddy can help them. Help students understand that some learners need to move around to learn, while others can learn sitting quietly. And kids are amazingly adept at knowing when a colleague or a classmate really actually needs to sit on a pillow, or needs to be on an exercise ball, or needs to have a fidget toy, or else their learning will be impacted. It's this weird fine line between teaching every student fairly and allowing students to really engage with their learning style. Okay, but students understand that. It's strange how they do, but they do. So then that allows you to differentiate these things. Okay, so if this is what I'm supposed if this is what I am supposed to differentiate, there we go. How do I actually do it? Okay, so what you need to do as a teacher, you need to use your Alberta Program of Studies to write your outcomes with the range of Bloom's verbs. That's why we want you to use a range of Bloom's verbs and be really specific in how you will know if students are reaching that outcome. Because if you don't actually know what you're teaching or how you're actually going to figure out if the child has actually learned what you want them to learn, trying to then differentiate, you can't differentiate because you don't even know what you're doing. So then you can't differentiate. So you have to know exactly what you're doing, which is why we keep coming back to you need to know your Alberta Program of Studies objectives, and then you need to know how you're actually going to see the student has learned what you wanted them to learn. Okay, so think about what will help each student to learn these outcomes. So this is back to that knowing the students. What you want to do is you want to choose overall instruction to promote maximum student achievement in all students. So you want, what is that instructional strategy that will actually work for all students? Is it centers? Is it a combination of independent working time and group time? Is it an inquiry-based project? So then think about that will work for all students. Then you start to bring in tools for beginning and developing students particularly, and then how to enrich and extend. So you're like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. But what does that actually look like in your differentiation section of your lesson plan, which you will now start to incorporate? So should it look like this in my lesson plan? So should beginning and developing, should the differentiation just be partner up with an excelling student or an EA, or write fewer sentences or words? Should excelling or enriching just be work with beginning student, do another worksheet or paragraph at the same level that he or she already understands, share more with class during class discussion? Should they just color or illustrate? Should they just catch up on homework, or should they just write extra sentences with more words? No, this is not what it should look like on your lesson plan. And these are actually examples that I've pulled from lesson plans. This is not what differentiation is. Let's look at what it is. Differentiation is you need to create the learning opportunity to be abstract, complex, and interrelated right from the start. So it does not just become a more situation, particularly for our extending and enriching. But if you create something right from the start that all your students can find their space in, then that is the best thing, okay? So that's the best way to differentiate. So for example, you may be teaching a math concept, and you may give students, you may have a bingo sheet. And on that sheet, it says, you need to do 2 or 3 of the activities on this bingo sheet, and you get to decide what they are. Okay? So then, and I know that we think that our kids might just be lazy and might just pick the easy ones. I've found in my experience that they hardly ever do. They really actually want to work at their level. So, and I saw this happen with a student teacher a couple of years ago when I was on a practicum, and she did this exact thing. She gave them a bingo sheet, and she had different levels of activities, and she let the students actually choose which activities they wanted to do. And they had to do 2 or 3. She said, amazingly, every student picked the activities that she basically created the activities for. And she said it was really kind of uncanny. And so then it's naturally differentiated. You've already done the differentiation right from the start. Instead of creating a very low-level Bloom's where it's not abstract, complex, and interrelated right from the start, because then you have nowhere to go. If it's abstract, complex, and interrelated right from the start, you have so many ways then to differentiate it, which then makes it easier, way easier to do. Okay, so this absolutely needs to be planned ahead by you. So you want to have tiered assignments. I'm going to read you just a quote from this Education Alberta resource that is on your, yes, it's on your reading list. And this is a quote: tiered assignments are parallel tasks that have varied levels of complexity, depth, abstractness, and support. Students in the class all focus on the same learning outcome, but work on different levels of activities related to the outcome. These type of assignments allow students who are gifted to work at a more challenging level. Tasks from one tier to the next should differ in level of complexity, not simply be more or less work at the same level. Okay, so things like open-ended questions also are a great way to differentiate, because again, students at the enriched level can actually be really drawing in different things, and those at the beginning level can go at that Bloom's thing, where they're actually saying, they're just giving you facts about the content. Okay, independent projects that are well executed, not just a free-for-all, that are well planned and executed, again, are naturally differentiated, because kids who are very sort of they're at the very concrete stage will give you a concrete project, and the kids who are at a very abstract stage are at an abstract project. Now you say, but then how do I grade it? Maybe some of these projects aren't for grades. Oh, what a concept, right? Maybe they are truly for learning. What? Truly for learning. Cluster groups of other children at the same level. So you can do those small groups where you're pulling those kids that really need to be at the same level. But then what you want to do is mix it up. Sometimes you'll mix up your groups. You want to increase access to diverse materials and resources, because you might have, when they start researching, so they're doing a project, give some students sites that are more advanced reading level at a higher cognitive challenge for your extending, and give kids some sites that are very factual, and then guide them to those sites. And then that way it is naturally differentiated without you saying, oh, you do less, you do more, right? They will find the sites that work for them. Let them do some self-assessment. Sometimes these kids know, they will know when they have not put in all of the effort that they needed to. And they'll recognize that. Usually kids are harder on themselves. But if they have actually put in the effort, and that is where they are cognitively, then you can honor that. And you can say, I also believe that you put in this amount of effort, and that you are where you are at from a cognitive point of view. And differentiated instruction for students who are gifted means enhanced opportunities for thinking and learning, not just more work to do. And again, that's from the resource that is on your reading list. Oftentimes we give our gifted and enhanced kids just more of the same, of the concepts that they already understand, which is not actually doing much for them. Okay, finally, experiences to support differentiation. Do lots of small group and one-on-one time. That's the best way to differentiate. When you can pinpoint a learning concept for a child and really explain it one-on-one, best way. Flexible grouping, again, sometimes you're going to differentiate by having leveled groups, and other times you're going to have interest groups. So and mix it up. Do some independent learning along with whole class, right? Sometimes that independent learning times helps that child to take the concepts that were introduced in a full class situation and really let them sink in. Sometimes those kids really need that time. Use technology. There are lots of books that are that are recorded, right? Or translated into different languages. Use the technologies. There are lots of educational sites with little like pop-up sites to give them more explanation. Use it. Okay. You want to give explicit instructions. Sometimes for your beginning students, having them written out or seeing them on the board helps them, because they get lost. They get lost in the 5-step instructions. So help them out. That leads into scaffolding supports. Maybe for some of your beginning students, you want to give them a graphic organizer, like, hey, these are the 3 things that we're doing in these next 30 minutes. This is, and just keep it on your desk. Give them some memory prompts. Okay, so this is our quiet time. Then it's going to be discussion time. So, so that they actually have a fighting chance of remembering what they're doing. Let them keep lists. Check mark. Maybe you have a color code key for what they need to do. Okay, you need to write 2 sentences, and then you're going to move on to a Venn diagram. And then you color code that. Or outline the components of the lesson that you really want them to catch. Bring in, here we go, integrated arts. Bring in some songs, bring in some movement, especially for our beginning students. Those different touch points to teach the content and the arts will just get those synapses going. And think about, sometimes those kids just need to have a particular placement, a physical placement in your class. Sometimes that's right beside you. Sometimes that's actually far away. Sometimes they need a break from you, right? Especially those beginning students. So think about your physical classroom. Do you have an exercise ball that child can sit on? Do you have some fidget toys? Do you have noise canceling headphones? Do you have some soft lights that you can put on? So think about the physical classroom and the particular placement of the students in the class. Okay, whew, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what does differentiation actually look like? Because I think sometimes we think I have to take my plan and then I have to do like 27 other plans to differentiate it. But no, if we design our learning opportunities in big, abstract, interrelated ways, that then is going to allow us so many places to go and so many ways to differentiate without us planning 27 different lessons. Okay, awesome. Take care. And I look forward to seeing you back in class when we're back together. Bye-bye.